Did you know, in the books, Bran loves Meera and wants to tell her how he feels, even though he knows she doesn't feel the same way? So, when Bran, Meera, Jojen, Hodor, and Summer reach the cave, and whites start bursting out from under the snow, it looks as though they are about to be surrounded and killed, and Bran thinks to himself, he wondered what Meera would think if he should suddenly tell her that he loved her. However, in the books, Jojen didn't die outside the cave, but instead goes missing in the final Bran chapter of A Dance with Dragons, and fans speculate Jojen might be in the red paste that the children of the forest are giving Bran to eat to awaken his green-seeing powers. Who sent the Catspaw to kill Bran in episode 2? The show actually gives no answer to this question, despite the fact it causes the War of the Five Kings. Now, in the books, Tyrion thinks it was Joffrey because of some very circumstantial evidence. However, one theory suggests it was Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall, who told Jon when he first met him that he was at Winterfell for the feast with King Robert and that he brought a bag of silver with him. In the books, Robb Stark tells Catelyn that the Catspaw had a bag of silver on him as payment. So why did Mance do it? To start a war between the Starks and Lannisters, so the Starks would march south, leaving the north unprotected. Because throughout history, every king beyond the wall has failed to reach the south by a Stark army waiting to defeat them. There are 3 rules that a warg like Bran cannot commit. The first is to eat the flesh of man. Bran has done this when he ate the Night's Watch mutineers as Summer in A Dance with Dragons. The second rule is not to mate while warging into another animal. Bran has not done this. And lastly, to seize the body of another man. This is the worst abomination and the one that Bran has committed the most times through Hodor. However, there is a terrifying theory that because of Bran's affection for Meera and the ease at which he can slip into Hodor's skin, Bran might try and mate with Meera through Hodor and break the last of the 3 rules which he hasn't broken. Since Bran's last interaction with Meera is him in Hodor's skin comforting her, and she runs out of the room afraid of him. There is a theory that Bran messed up Aerys Targaryen's head the same way he did to Hodor. This is because Aerys was described as a handsome, charming, and generous young man. He, Tywin, and Stefford Baratheon, Robert, Stannis, and Renly's dad, were all friends and fought in the final Blackfyre rebellion together. This is why Tywin became his hand and Stefford died trying to procure a wife for Aerys' heir, Rhaegar. However, after the defiance of Duskendale, Aerys started to go mad. Maybe because Bran was trying to prepare Westeros for the long night by procuring as much wildfire as possible and even trying to birth more dragons, which are the 2 things Aerys was obsessed with doing. However, like Hodor, the mind control went too far and Aerys lost all semblance of who he was as a person, since he became obsessed with fires and dragons. When Catelyn's betrothal to Brandon Stark was announced at a feast, Catelyn and Peter danced 6 dances, but when he tried to kiss her, she pushed him away and laughed at him. Wounded by the rejection, Peter got drunk, passed out, and was brought to his bed by Brynden Tully. Lysa snuck in after him and gave Peter her maidenhead. When the date of Catelyn's wedding was announced, Peter, scarcely 15 years old, challenged the 20-year-old Brandon Stark to a duel for her hand. He arrived with only a helm, breastplate, and mail, leading to Brandon taking off most of his own armor. Catelyn begged Brandon not to kill Peter, to which he agreed. While Brandon offered Peter multiple chances to yield, Peter refused to give up. In the end, Peter was staggering and bleeding from a dozen wounds when Brandon ended the duel with a backhand cut Catelyn thought was mortal. When Jaime pushed Bran from the window, he had been listening in on their conversation and heard some secrets, which is probably another factor for why Jaime pushed him. Bran heard Jaime tell Cersei, "We ought to count ourselves lucky," the man said. The king might as easily have named one of his brothers, or even Littlefinger. Give me honorable enemies rather than ambitious ones. But Cersei warns Jaime about Stark. "Oh, I don't deny he's loyal to Robert. That's obvious. What happens when Robert dies and Joff takes the throne? And the sooner that comes to passes, the safer we'll all be. My husband grows more restless every day. Having Stark beside him will only make him worse. He's still in love with the sister, the insipid little dead 16-year-old. How long till he decides to put me aside for some new Lyanna?" Which is ironically Renly's plan. for Margaery to marry Robert and put Cersei aside. It is suspicious that Ned buried Lyanne in the crypts of Winterfell because only the Lords of Winterfell are meant to be buried there. For example, Ned's father and brother were placed in the crypts because technically Ned's father died first, and so the lordship passed to Brandon minutes before he died as well. So having them there makes sense. But Lyanna was never Lord of Winterfell. However, it might have to do with Jon Snow. In A Dance with Dragons, Theon is in the crypts when this happens. "That king is missing his sword," Lady Dustin observed. It was true, the long sword he should have held was gone. The sight disquieted him. He had always heard that the iron in the sword kept the spirits of the dead locked within their tombs. If a sword was missing, Theon thought. So maybe Ned wanted to contain Lyanna's spirit in the crypt of Winterfell to keep the secret of Jon Snow's birth. When Bran Stark is at the council to decide who should be king of Westeros, and Tyrion gives his awful "who has a better story than Bran the Broken" speech, Bran replies with the line, "Why do you think I came all this way?" as to suggest he knew this was going to happen. But if he knew this was going to happen, it stands to reason he knew Daenerys was going to go crazy and burn down King's Landing, but did nothing to try and stop it, but instead might have actually facilitated in Daenerys' downfall by telling Sam that Jon is the prince that was promised, since all this does is contribute to Daenerys' spiral into madness. Not only that, but Bran gives no warning to prevent Daenerys' dragon from dying north of the Wall or to Euron's fleet. Honestly, the only thing that could have saved the Game of Thrones ending would be the revelation that Bran planned it all in his pursuit to become king of Westeros. When interrogating Jaime about who sent the cat's paw to kill Bran, she realizes it wasn't Jaime or the Lannisters like she suspected. She says to him, "So you gave your cat's paw a bag of silver to make certain Bran would never wake. Did I now?" Jaime lifted his cup and took a long swallow. "I won't deny we talked of it, but you were with the boy day and night. Your maester and Lord Eddard attended him frequently, and there were guards, even those damned direwolves. It would have required cutting my way through half of Winterfell, and why bother when the boy seemed like to die of his own accord? If you lie to me, this session is at an end. I may indeed have shit for honor, I won't deny it, but I have never yet hired anyone to do my killing. Believe what you will, Lady Stark, but if I had wanted your Bran dead, I would have slain him myself. Gods be merciful, he's telling the truth," she realized. Bran tells Sansa he can never be Lord of Winterfell. He can never be Lord of anything, as he's the three-eyed raven. However, as we all know, he goes all the way to King's Landing to rule the Seven Kingdoms. Why do you think I came all this way? It's been memed to death by now, but why can he be one and not the other? It actually makes no sense. What if Brandon Stark killed Littlefinger in their duel? Back in the day, Littlefinger, who was in love with Catelyn Stark, challenged Brandon to a duel for her hand. Brandon, of course, was a much better fighter who could have easily killed Littlefinger. However, he promised Catelyn he wouldn't do so. What would have happened if he actually did? Well, the butterfly effect would be that the entire Stark-Lannister war might not have happened with Jon Arryn still alive and Ned not traveling south. Bran says you can't love both ice and fire, but Bran's life had turned into endless chilly days on Hodor's back, riding his basket up and down the slopes of mountains. Up and down, Mira would sigh sometimes as they walked, then down and up and down again. I hate these stupid mountain of yours, Prince Bran. Yesterday you said you love them. Oh, I do. My Lord Father told me about mountains, but I never saw one till now. I love them more than I can say. Bran made a face at her. But you just said you hated them. Why can't it be both? Mira reached up to pinch his nose. Because they're different, he insisted, like night and day, or ice and fire. If ice can burn, said Jojen in his solemn voice, then love and hate can mate. Mountain or marsh, it makes no matter. The land is one. One, his sister agreed, but over-wrinkled. Bran was frustrated that he didn't take the King's Road to find the three-eyed crow. So often they found themselves going long leagues in the wrong direction, and sometimes they were forced to double back the way they'd come.
"If we took the King's Road, we could be at the wall by now," Bran would remind the Reeds. He wanted to find the three-eyed crow so he could learn to fly. 100 times he said it, if he said it once, until Meera started teasing by saying it along with him. Mountain folk knew that Bran was traveling with companions heading north. Jojen Reed stopped to catch his breath. "Do you think these mountain folk know we're here?" They know. Bran had seen them watching, not with his own eyes, but with Summer's sharper ones that missed so little. "They won't bother us long as we don't try and make off with their goats or horses." Nor did they. Only once did they encounter any of the mountain people, when a sudden burst of freezing rain sent them looking for shelter. Summer found it for them, sniffing out a shallow cave, but Bran saw the orange glow of fire further back and realized they were not alone. "Come in and warm yourselves," a man's voice called out. "There's stone enough to keep the rain off all our heads." He offered them oat cakes and blood sausage and a swallow of ale from a skin he carried, but never his name, nor did he ask theirs. Little suggested to Bran and his group not to go to the wall. "As to that wall," the man went on, "it's not a place that I'd be going." The old bear took the watch into the haunted woods, and all that came back was his ravens, with hardly a message between them. "Dark wings, dark words," me mother used to say, "but when the birds fly silent, seems to me that's even darker." He poked at the fire with his stick. "It was different when there was a Stark in Winterfell, but the old wolf's dead and the young one's gone south to play the Game of Thrones, and all that's left us is the ghosts." "The wolves will come again," said Jojen solemnly. "And how would you be knowing that, boy?" "I dreamed it. Some nights I dream of me mother that I buried 9 years past," the man said. "But when I awake, she's not come back to us. There are dreams and dreams, my lord." Bran tried to walk into an eagle when traveling north with Meera. Meera woke him up with a light touch on his arm. "Look," she said, pointing at the sky with her frog spear. "An eagle." Bran lifted his head and saw it. Its grey wings spread and still as it floated on the wind. He followed it with his eyes as it circled higher, wondering what it would be like to soar about the world so effortless. Better than climbing even. He tried to reach the eagle, to leave his stupid crippled body and rise into the sky to join it, the way he joined with Summer. The Greenseers could do it. I should be able to do it too. He tried and tried until the eagle vanished in the golden haze of the afternoon. "It's gone," he said, disappointed. "We'll see others," said Meera. "They live up here, I suppose." Bran wondered if Theon killed old Nan. Jojen kicked a pine cone. "Hodor likes it when you say his name, I think." "Hodor's not his true name," Bran explained. "It's just some word he says. His real name is Walder. Old Nan told me. She was his grandmother's grandmother, or something." Talking about old Nan made him sad. "Do you think the Iron Men killed her? She never hurt no one, not even Theon. She just told stories. Theon wouldn't hurt someone like that, would he?" "Some people hurt others just because they can," said Jojen. "And it wasn't Theon who did the killing at Winterfell," said Meera. "Too many of the dead were Iron Men." She shifted her frog spear to her other hand. "Remember old Nan's stories, Bran. Remember the way she told them, the sound of her voice. So long as you do that, part of her will always be alive in you." "I'll remember," he promised. When Isaac Hempstead Wright first read the final Game of Thrones script, he thought it was a prank, only to realize it was real. He told Entertainment Weekly he was shocked at first and even secretly hoped for a dramatic death scene instead. Still, he came to appreciate the ending. "It's bittersweet," he said, echoing George R.R. Martin's intent. He admitted fans would be upset, but believed unpredictability was the best outcome. While many questioned Bran's rise to power, Wright now sees it as a fitting close to the story. Christian Nahn, who played Hodor on Game of Thrones, revealed he developed a serious back injury from years of carrying Bran, Isaac Hempstead Wright, on set. By season 6, Wright had grown too tall, so a smaller body double was used instead. Later, they also found a stunt double who closely matched Nahn's build. Despite the pain, Nahn said he wouldn't sue. The show's done so much for me, he explained on the Inside of You podcast. Holding the door broke our hearts, but carrying Bran nearly broke his back. That the children of the forest and weirwood trees are so much more fascinating in the books. The trees don't just witness, they remember. Through Jojen Reed's talk with Bran, George R.R. Martin reveals their profound bond of memory, magic, and nature. A reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies, says Jojen. The man who never reads lives only one. The singers of the forest had no books, no ink, no parchment, no written language. Instead, they had the trees, and the weirwoods above all. When they died, they went into the wood, into leaf and limb and root, and all the trees remembered. All their songs and spells, their histories and prayers, everything they knew about this world. Maesters will tell you that the weirwoods are sacred to the old gods. The singers believe they are the old gods. Simply put, the weirwoods are living archives of a forgotten world, carrying voices that still echo through the silence of Westeros. Bloodraven, Bran's guide in Game of Thrones, is alive in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. But who exactly is Bloodraven? His real name is Brynden Rivers, and he was born in King's Landing as the bastard son of King Aegon IV and his sixth mistress, Lady Melissa Blackwood. Like Aegon IV's other bastards, he was legitimized, but remained loyal to the Targaryens over the Blackfyres during the rebellions. He would also serve as Hand of the King to 2 separate kings, as well as Master of Whisperers. He was later sent to the Wall, where he rose to Lord Commander before disappearing while ranging. While there's no confirmation, he is very likely to appear at some point in the story, perhaps in the later seasons. Ned's older brother, Brandon, liked to sleep with virgins. Brandon was taller than his younger brother, Eddard, and Catelyn Tully found Brandon more handsome than Ned. Brandon was also wilder and more hot-blooded, a trait his father, Lord Rickard Stark, described as originating from the wolf blood. Brandon shared this trait with his sister, Lyanna, and Eddard believes this led them both to early deaths. Brandon was a better swordsman and jouster than his younger brothers. Lord Hoster Tully considers Brandon to have been a gallant fool. Brandon was not shy about taking what he wanted, including women. Lady Barbary Riswell, one of Brandon's lovers, believes he enjoys taking her virginity. When asked if Brandon had any issue, George R.R. Martin responded, "It'd be an exaggeration to say that Brandon died before he could have children. It's established in the books that he was no virgin. He could very well have left behind some little snows in the various places he's visited. But what's absolutely clear is that he had no legitimate children." Cold Hands is way more terrifying and feeds Bran, Jojen, and Meera, dead Night's Watch brothers from Craster's mutiny, as they travel north. Bran asks, "What happened to the men, the foes behind us?" "They will not trouble you." "Who were they? Wildlings?" Meera turned the meat to cook the other side. "They were foes. Men of the Night's Watch." "You killed them." Cold Hands did not deny it. "They were your brothers. I saw. Their cloaks were black, like your hands." Cold Hands said nothing. "Who are you? Why are your hands black?" "Once the heart has ceased to beat, a man's blood runs down into his extremities, where it thickens and congeals." His voice rattled in his throat, as thin and gaunt as he was. Meera Reed rose, her frog spear in her hand, a chunk of smoking meat still impaled upon its tines. "Show us your face." The ranger made no move to obey. "He's dead." Bran could taste the bile in his throat. "Meera, he's some dead thing. The monsters cannot pass so long as the wall stands and the men of the Night's Watch stay true. That's what old Nan used to say. He came to meet us at the wall, but he could not pass. He sent Sam instead, with that wildling girl." Meera's gloved hand tightened around the shaft of her frog spear. "Who are you? Who is this three-eyed crow?" "A friend," dreamer wizard, call him what you will, the last green seer. Jojen, did you dream this? Mira asked her brother. Who is he? What is he? What do we do now? We will go with the ranger, said Jojen. We have come too far to turn back now, Mira. We would never make it back to the wall alive. We go with Bran's monster or we die.
Rickon is still alive and on the island of Skagos, where people are known to feast on human flesh. Davos has been sent to smuggle Rickon out of Skagos so he can become the new Lord of Winterfell after Stannis defeats the Boltons with the North's help. However, there are fears that when he returns, like his wolf, Rickon will have developed a taste for human meat and become more wolf than human. This could lead to conflict between Rickon and Sansa over who should inherit Winterfell, with Stannis and the Northern Lords supporting Rickon and Littlefinger and the Vale supporting Sansa. They could also both end up supporting different kings or queens to inherit the Iron Throne. Asha Greyjoy is less moral. For example, in the show, she questions how Theon could kill Bran and Rickon by burning them alive. Of course, she is unaware they are the Miller's boys. But in the books, she is angry that he killed them because they would have made great hostages for the Iron Islands. It's a subtle change that shows just how ruthless the Iron Islanders are, including a character like Asha.
How did Catelyn Stark react to the news of her sons, Bran and Rickon, being killed by Theon Greyjoy? We first witness her reaction as she tells Brienne about a letter she received. I have no sons but Robb. She managed those terrible words without a sob, and for that much she was glad. Brienne looked at her with horror. My lady? Bran and Rickon tried to escape, but were taken at a mill on the Acorn Water. Theon Greyjoy has mounted their heads on the walls of Winterfell. Theon Greyjoy, who ate at my table since he was a boy of 10. I have said it. Gods forgive me. I have said it and made it true. There are no words, my lady. My good lady. Your sons, they're with the gods now. Are they? Catelyn said sharply. What god would let this happen? How did Arya Stark react to the news of her brothers, Bran and Rickon, supposedly dying? She first heard about it during a conversation between Roose Bolton and Hostine Frey. He has lost the North, insisted Hostine Frey. He has lost Winterfell. His brothers are dead. For a moment, Arya forgot to breathe. Dead? Bran and Rickon? Dead? What does he mean? What does he mean about Winterfell? Joffrey could never take Winterfell. Never. Robb would never let him. Then she remembered that Robb was not at Winterfell. He was away in the west, and Bran was crippled and Rickon only 4. It took all her strength to remain still and silent, the way Syrio Forel had taught her, to stand there like a stick of furniture. She felt tears gathering in her eyes and willed them away. It's not true. It can't be true. It's just some Lannister lie.
The direwolves in the Game of Thrones TV show were captivating creatures that held immense potential. However, despite their initial prominence, the direwolves were underused and treated as a hindrance as the show progressed. Jon Snow's ghost, Robb Stark's Grey Wind, Sansa's Lady, Arya's Nymeria, Bran's Summer, and Rickon's Shaggy Dog were sadly shoved out of the Game of Thrones show as quickly as possible by lazy writing. The most prominent example being Ghost, who had such a close connection and plot importance to Jon Snow, was eventually regulated to a background character in season 6 and 7 in favor of showing off Daenerys' dragons before being given a pitiful return in season 8 when he should have been front and center when Jon met Daenerys at Dragonstone. Even Arya's reunion with Nymeria was extremely underwhelming, and Summer's ultimate demise and lack of screen time was very disappointing. There is the mystery of who sent the direwolves. It is theorized that Bloodraven might have sent them to unlock the Stark children's warging abilities, since the direwolves greatly influence both the story and the Stark children. For example, Grey Wind wins Robb the battle at Oxcross,
Summer saves Bran multiple times and awakens his third eye. Both Arya and Jon Snow have wolf dreams that influence their decisions. Shaggy Dog is the proof that Rickon is the true-born heir to Winterfell, and Lady's death helps awaken Sansa to the savagery at court. The mother direwolf, killed by a shattered antler, also convinces Catelyn to send her children away. All in all, the arrival of the direwolves might have allowed a powerful skin changer like Bloodraven to influence the Stark children through their pets.
Grey Wind was not actually killed in a stable during the Red Wedding. In the Game of Thrones show, we are shown Grey Wind being surrounded outside the stable he was kept in while the events of the Red Wedding were taking place. Being cornered, he couldn't do anything but get killed at that moment. However, in the books, Grey Wind actually escaped and killed 4 Frey wolfhounds and the kennel master while being attacked. Grey Wind eventually succumbed to his injuries, however, and died. All the Stark kids are wargs. In the show, we only really see Bran being a warg by going into his wolf as well as with Hodor. However, in the books, all the Stark kids warg into their direwolves except for Sansa. It is even believed that Jon Snow warged into Ghost when he was killed by the Night's Watch. Rickon wargs into his direwolf, which might have caused him to become more wolf than human and eventually eat other people on Skargos. Arya wargs into Nymeria and Cat to become a more proficient killer for the Faithless Assassins. Robb might have walked into Grey Wind to discover the secret path that he used to win the Battle of Oxcross against the Lannisters, since afterwards, Grey Wind was credited with finding the Goat Path. But maybe it was Robb inside of Grey Wind, looking for a way to surprise the Lannister host in the Westerlands. Arya's direwolf Nymeria actually plays a somewhat bigger role. In the show, Nymeria disappears in Season 1 and isn't seen again until Season 7, where she is seen leading a wolf pack. In the books, however, there are tales of Nymeria forming a massive wolf pack and terrorizing the Riverlands region. The Wandering Septon, Merribold, tells Brienne, "They say the pack is led by a monstrous she-wolf, a stalking shadow grim and grey and huge. They will tell you that she has been known to bring Oryx down all by herself, that no trap nor snare can hold her, slays any wolf that tries to mount her, and devours no other flesh but man." Arya and Jon also have dreams about Nymeria, which could indicate the direwolf playing a role later on when Arya does eventually return to Westeros rather than what we saw in the show. All the direwolves and their fates may match their Stark owners in the books. Jon is practically a ghost now. Sansa becomes Lady of Winterfell in the show. Robb and Grey Wind died at the hands of House Frey, whose sigil features grey. Nymeria leads a wolf pack, reflecting Arya's role as a warrior, just like her namesake, Nymeria the Warrior Queen. Bran might represent summer fighting against winter, while a Shaggy Dog story known for a meaningless ending could reflect Rickon's fate. When Ned Stark found out Summer saved Bran's life, he started feeling guilty about killing Lady and wondered if he committed some grave mistake. He thought to himself, "Your children were meant to have these pups, my lord." And he had killed Sansa's. And for what? If the gods had sent these wolves, what folly had he done? It would have been interesting if the girls had their direwolves while in King's Landing, especially when the Lannisters attacked the Stark forces during the failed coup.
Sophie Turner, who betrays Sansa Stark, managed to convince her family to adopt the dog that played her direwolf on Game of Thrones. You might remember that Lady was sadly killed by Ned Stark on Cersei's demand. Sophie Turner said this about it: "Growing up, I always wanted a dog, but my parents never wanted one. We kind of fell in love with my character's direwolf, Lady, on set. We knew Lady died on the show and they wanted to rehome her, so we took her in." One of Game of Thrones' biggest Season 8 debates wasn't about dragons or battles, it was about a wolf. In Episode 4, Jon Snow leaves Ghost behind with Torment before heading south, without even petting him goodbye. The silent farewell enraged fans. After 8 seasons of loyalty, Ghost whimpers as Jon barely glances at him, sparking memes declaring Ghost deserves better, and comparing John to the worst pet owners in TV history. Director David Nutter later revealed the reason: CGI. He admitted it was best to keep it simple because direwolves were fully digital creations. But that explanation, especially in a show that spent millions animating dragons, only fueled the backlash. Fans coined the term Dire Wolfgate, and HBO eventually gave Ghost a proper reunion hug in the finale. Still, the moment remains infamous, proof that even a missing pat on the head can spark uproar in Westeros. Anyway, subscribe for more.